Howdy! I'm Jewel and welcome to my channel, Just Being Jewel. So today I wanted to talk about the books that I read in July, which were not a lot. I only read 3 books, but it's not how many books you read, it's that you like reading books that makes you a reader. So let's talk about them. Out of the 3 books that I read, it actually totaled up to 1,390 pages of books, which is a lot. So some of them were kind of hefty. I'll go in order of the ones I liked least to the ones that I liked most. And to start off on a low end here, the book that I liked the least in July actually surprises me by how much I didn't like it. And that is Memnoch the Devil by Anne Rice. So this is the 5th book in the Vampire Chronicles series, and I relatively enjoyed all of the Vampire Chronicles leading up to this. So, not trying to get too religious on the channel, I myself am not a very religious person. I found out after I finished this that this was written after Anne Rice became a born-again Christian, which explains a lot about what I read. My opinion is it definitely didn't feel like a plot or a story. It felt like Lestat's interview with the devil. Like, it was the devil telling his side of the story and just a giant lore dump about what really happened between the devil and God. And I tried to get into it, and I was like, oh, it's gonna, they gotta give us this information, this story, so the plot can kick in, and it's gonna be relevant to the plot. But then they just kept telling the story and kept telling it, and the plot never kicked in. And there were a couple things in this that towards the end that I super hated and grossed me the heck out. So chapter 21, if you are squeamish at all, don't read it. You know what, I'm just gonna say it. So if you are squeamish, skip forward. I'll put my hand down when I'm done. If you don't want to read spoilers, I will put my hand down when I'm done. There is a chapter where Lestat sucks the blood, the menstruation blood, out of a character's vagina. I was horrified. That's it. The gross spoilery stuff is over. But that was enough for me. I was too close to finishing at that point to not finish it. I was like, I gotta do it, I gotta finish it. But that right there, if that had happened in like the first couple chapters or like the first half of the book, I would have quit it immediately. It was only because I was so close to finishing that I was like, fuck, I gotta finish it. The other thing that I really didn't like is towards the end, one of the characters in this book does something completely out of character. So you're being told this entire time this character Dora is very pious and she's very faithful to God, and she's not about icons, and she doesn't care about material things. And at the end, she just completely flips the script, in my opinion. I guess some people could argue otherwise, but I don't think that she was true to what we were introduced to and told about throughout the entire book. So this was my least favorite book, and because I hated this so much, I am taking a break on reading the Vampire Chronicles. Like, I'm just, when it comes, it comes, if I ever feel the desire again, but it's not happening anytime soon. It just left a bad taste in my mouth. Cool, the next book on my list here is going to be The Hounds by Sasha Stronach. So if you've watched any of my other videos, there were a couple videos where I read the little summary on the back. If you were ever planning to read this book, don't read the summary on the back, because it talks about stuff that literally doesn't happen until like 100 pages in, and this book's only 300 pages long. So that's a third of the way into the story. You just spoiled the story, in my opinion. Like, I think whoever wrote this needs to be talked to and maybe have a meeting with their supervisor about how to improve upon their book synopsis writing skills. So that was my first problem, is that I basically spent the first third of the book reading what I already knew was going to happen. I wanted to like it though. I think that there was a lot of good topics in this book. It's very queer. The main character is bi. It discusses, there's lesbian characters. It just discusses a lot of queerness and how so many people, because they are queer, are often oppressed in some way. And it discusses the justice system, and it discusses, even if you are trying to be a good cop, because there are so many bad cops, you're still part of the system. It discusses, there should have been so much opportunity for this. It makes a point of saying that, like, everything's made of, like, plants and funguses and mycelium and things like that. And that's the new technology. And the old technology is things made of iron and things made of steel, which I thought was super cool and could have been super revolutionary to write about something like that. Like, you could have blown my brain with that kind of material. But it was not nearly detailed enough for all that this author was trying to put in here and all that they were trying to talk about. Like, he needed to probably double this book length to make things comprehensible, because he was just rapid fire, like, making things happen. Like, the story was progressing and things were happening, but I was like, I don't know what's happening. I'm very confused. And I would go back and try to reread it and be like, do I know what's going on? And it would just keep, I felt like I was reading every other page of a book. Like, I was, like, my copy was missing material. But it wasn't. When I went to book club for this book, I was not missing material. Other people had the same feelings. So that was really frustrating to me, to not understand what's going on as I'm reading it. Like, the characters didn't understand what was going on either, it felt like. Like, there was no explanation for a lot of things. It was like, wait, we're going where? We're doing what now? And why are we doing that? What's the end objective here? What are we trying to achieve? Who's the bad guy? There's some demigods, and there's an army infiltrating town, and I feel like we just didn't get enough resolution or detail or context to get what was going on in this book. And I also was really frustrated about the romance that's in it, because as a bi person, I want to love a bi romance in here. Like, I want the bi character in here, the main character, to have an awesome romance. But it was not. It was like out of nowhere, out of left field. There wasn't, I mean, there was a hint, but it wasn't enough. And also, it was, without, I don't want to spoil anything, but there was not enough tension or buildup, and it was too disconnected for me to feel like it was a believable romance. And because of that, I was really frustrated. A lot of times I can look past mediocre romances in fantasy novels because I love the fantasy story more than I love the romance. But because it was a bi character, I just felt gypped. I was like, oh cool, finally some representation, and it's just not that good. One of my other complaints about this book is it needed a freaking map. It needed a map. I know this was self-published at first and it was picked up by a publisher, but God, just draw me something with stick figures or something, because there would be mentions of these proper nouns, and I would be like, is this a building? Is this a city? Is this a street? I couldn't orient myself because I didn't have a map, and the characters do very much go all over town and all over the city and all over this place, and without a map to understand what's happening and where they're going, it would have helped me follow things a little easier. I may have been a little less confused than I was. My final complaint on this one, and then I'll stop, I promise, is the metaphors that this author used. So I don't know if this author is from New Zealand, so I don't know if it's just because I'm not from New Zealand and I don't understand New Zealand culture or their slang, which there was a lot of New Zealand slang in here. But there were some metaphors that I was like, what does that mean? In fact, one of them that sticks out in my mind is there was a character speaking another language, and the author described the flow of this language, the sound of this language, as being comparable to pouring out bad wine in an alleyway. What does that mean? Pouring out bad wine in an alleyway. I was like, that doesn't, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by saying that. Another metaphor that I literally like put the book down and I was like, I looked over at my partner Sean and I was like, Sean, what does the sound of two pieces of soap being rubbed together make? What does it sound like? And he was like, I don't know. It doesn't really make a sound, I don't think. And I was like, okay, well, according to this book, two pieces of soap being rubbed together squeaks. It said something squeaked, like the sound of two pieces of soap being rubbed together. And I just was like, I disagree. Maybe you have different soap in New Zealand that I don't know about, but like it was so unrelatable, the metaphors, and so confusing, the metaphors, that it took me out of the novel to go, what does that mean? So I wish I could have loved it because there were a lot of awesome ideas in this, and I would love to see this book just like completely rewritten, like the idea, the entire concept of this book redone, because it had so much potential. And I think that's why I'm so upset with it, is it could have been great and instead it wasn't. But that's how I felt about the Dawn Hounds. And my final book that I read in July, which makes up for both of those books, is going to be Dune by Frank Herbert. So I don't know what I can say on a booktube channel that hasn't already been said about Dune. So I'm not going to go on a super long tangent about why I think Dune is great, which I know Dune is really polarizing for some people. You either love Dune or you hate Dune. There's like no in between. And I'm on the I love Dune side. I'm here for the political mind games and the political intrigue, and I really loved the message, the theme of environmentalism and creating a world that is better for future generations, even if it's not for you at that moment, even if you might never see what it gets to be. I'm like getting emotional thinking about it because I mean, it still applies to today. Like, he wrote this how long ago, and environmentalism is more important now than I think it ever has been in our past. And I just think the world building is incredible. I will say, at the very beginning, the first like maybe 50 pages or so, as I was reading it, I was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I'm going to be smart enough for this book. Like, maybe I'm just not, I ain't that bright. Maybe I don't got it. But as I continued to get more context, everything started to fall together and I started to understand what was happening. And as you go through it and you continue reading it and you learn more and more, the world building is just insane. The amounts that this author has managed to put in here it blows my mind, and I'm really excited to continue reading the Dune series and the further books in this world, because what an absolutely incredible author in my opinion. And that's all I'll say on Dune, because I could talk forever, but it's already been said by people more eloquent than me. So you made it all the way to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. You don't have to like and subscribe. We're a proponent of free will here. But I appreciate your time. And I'll see you next time.